Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, Veronica. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I love your background. You're in
Oh,
Surface.
thank you, thank you. I try to immerse myself in the world, even though this world could give you anxiety really, really quick. It's
It
one of the
gives
things
me
actually.
anxiety all the time.
Well, I can understand it because you were in it from the beginning. Actually, one of the things that first caught my attention, Veronica, about the show was the lost memories aspect connected to the trauma. I thought that was a really, really neat concept. But how did you come up with the overall concept for the story?
Oh, I'm so glad you noticed that in the psychogenic in episode 4 when they're talking about, what could cause this kind of memory loss. It could be physical trauma, but it also could be this emotional thing. And that was, the idea of memory loss in some ways is a trope. But in this show, I feel like we've utilized it to show a totally different side of these themes of destiny and second chances. Sophie wakes up and her brain has essentially been rebooted. She's lost everything, which means she's also kind of erased the mistakes that she's made in the past. She has a chance to be a different person, maybe a better person, maybe to evolve. And as we see her struggle with learning who she really was before and asking the question, will I become that person again? We get to explore these bigger themes of basically destiny. Are we all destined to repeat the same patterns that we did before? And that's a theme that comes up in the show in lots of different visual ways, the repeating of patterns.
I think it's interesting too because I almost feel like you've got two different versions of Sophie that you're dealing with in this story because of the memory loss and everything like that. Did it kind of feel that way to you as you were going through it? I actually thought you guys weaved that very, very well in this show.
Oh, thank you for saying that. It's absolutely, there's at least two sides of Sophie, if not more, as
True,
we'll come
true.
to uncover. What I love about the pilot is that we really have a visual way to represent that when Sophie is trying to be who she thinks she's supposed to be. She's supposed to be this kind of demure, perfect wife, and she picks this flowered dress that her husband says looks great on her and wears it to this party thinking, this is who people want me to be, so that's who I'm going to try to be. But then later in the pilot, in the back of the closet, she finds this very sexy black dress, which is the dress on the poster. It's the Sophie
Mm-hmm.
dress now, and she puts that on, and Gugu's performance is so magnetic in that moment. You can see her face change. She actually echoes some of the same expressions that she makes later on when we might see past Sophie in that dress. And you start to wonder, are there other sides to herself? And you get that taste from the very beginning.
That dress does become very, very important when you're watching the show. Once you stop watching, you're like, oh, that's what she was talking about. So I feel like Veronica, the concept is the hook. I get that, but when you actually start watching the series, to me anyway, it felt very character driven too. So what was it like putting the cast together and finding just the right fit for each role?
It was a challenge, but I think we ended up with the absolute best people that we possibly could have. Like Ollie is so funny in real life. He's such a goofball and such a relaxed person. And then on screen, he has this intensity and this danger to him that can be very charismatic or also very scary. So we're really lucky to have him and Stefan, Ari, everybody in the cast did a fantastic job.
I'm so glad you said that about Oliver too, because I feel like I'm trying to decide, especially in the early going, like, is this guy dangerous? Is he reckless? What is it about this guy? So talk about James's character a little bit and kind of the edge that he's on as well.
Well, without giving too much away, it's hard to talk about the plot of this show without any
Oh,
spoilers.
believe me, I had a hard time trying to figure out what to ask
You're
you
doing
guys.
great. Kudos. But James's motivations are much more complicated than you might think at first, right? So we as writers have the challenge that once we do understand where people were really coming from way later in the season, we have to go back and make sure everything they say, everything they did, it still tracks with those motivations. It's one thing to make the audience think something, but you can't betray them and then say, oh, we were just doing that to scare you or to make you
Mhm.
think that this person was a good guy or this person was a bad guy. It all has to make sense with where their character was truly coming from. And I think that's something we really pulled off in this season, and something I'm really excited for people to see.
So there's no secret, Veronica, there's a love triangle going on here. We see that in the trailer. So fans always choose sides in these types of
Hmm.
situations. We know that. Is it going to be, do you feel like an obvious choice where fans are going to go here? Do you expect maybe a little bit of push and pull, surprisingly?
I don't think it's obvious at all. In the writer's room, we had fights, hashtag Team James, hashtag
Whoa,
Team Baden.
okay.
I think the mark of a good love triangle is that you're split down the middle in terms of the writers, in terms of the fans. And I think people are going to have a hard time choosing between which one of these guys brings out the real Sophie.
Very, very true. Now, right away, though, I was taken in by that relationship between Sophie and James. I mean, whether you pick them or not, that is a very interesting relationship. There's a lot to unpack there. Would you say that theirs is a bit of a perception versus reality story in a kind of way?
I think Sophie and James had a curated image that potentially they were both in on from the beginning. And as we uncover the truth behind their relationship, those motivations start to become really clear. We're lucky to be able to have done a flashback episode from James's point of view much later in the season that really unpacks how they got to the place that's so fraught and complicated where we meet them in the pilot.
Absolutely. Anytime you're dealing with a mystery, there's tension. There's also waiting for those big reveals as a fan, though. So, how do you manage the pace of what you reveal and when you reveal it?
That's a really interesting question. People keep bringing that up, and I feel like the story just had to be told. We knew who these people were and what the real dynamic was, and I almost felt like we had too many twists and turns and too many reveals, and we needed to slow it down. But we always wanted to come at those things sort of from a left turn, and not have Sophie like just always discover something. But sometimes people come to her and tell her the truth or confess, because we realized they couldn't live with the lies anymore. That's something that happens with one of the characters without any spoilers. But yeah.
I know what character she's talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I also wanted to, I was thinking, as I'm watching the show, the web of lies thing kept coming up before I let you go. And you could use that as the story progresses. But on the flip side, do you feel like there's also a web of truths as well?
There's definitely a web of truths, and that is what Sophie has to get to the center of. She is climbing that web throughout the season, and I promise by the end of episode 8, she basically unpacks the center of that.
And we'll untangle it all on July the 29th. That's when the first 3 episodes of Surface hits Apple TV Plus. And creator Veronica West, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.